Talk to me about the Department of Government Efficiency. I know we posted something about that the other day, and you replied to it, and I wanted to ask you about it when we're on here because I think it's there's a couple misconceptions about it being that it's not an actual department, that it's not saving money. Can you kind of explain what's going on behind the scenes with DOGE?
Sure. This is super weird. So I do want to say the date because this could change. It's February 27th, 2025. As of today, the Department of Government Efficiency is not a real department. A department, so the way the government is structured, you have the department in the executive branch. And underneath that are a bunch of different agencies. So, for example, the Department of Homeland Security is an umbrella of 22 different agencies. A department needs to be created by Congress. So the Department of Homeland Security was created during the George W. Bush administration, but it was Congress that did it. And then every year that department is funded by Congress, and then its activities are authorized. None of that has happened with DOGE. So the way that it was created was via an executive order by taking an agency. So again, an agency is a sub part of a department. It took an agency called the Digital Services Agency, which existed to basically do like tech work. It was created when the Obamacare exchanges were a mess. And so we hired a bunch of people to make them not a mess. That's what that is. It's not a very important agency. Donald Trump essentially renamed that DOGE. And so when I look at everything that's happening, I call it a fake department because it's not real. Like it's wild that this is happening. And so what we think might be happening, because there's no transparency here, we think these DOGE people might be giving orders to the people who are in charge of the agencies right now, who are then executing what Elon tells them to do. But if it is coming directly from Elon, this is not authorized or funded by Congress, so it all might be illegitimate. It's really wild what's happening right now. And so there's lawsuits, but lawsuits take a minute through the courts.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, just the other day, there was a bunch of layoffs that happened, but a judge stepped in and said none of these are legal. And so we think there might be a mass rehiring because none of those were legal. So right now we're just seeing unprecedented attempts to it looks to me like break our government, because they're doing things in ways that have never been done, have never been allowed. So yeah, DOGE is a fascinating thing in that I hesitate to even call it real at this point.
Yeah, so there's no actual intrinsic governmental authority behind the department
No,
as it exists.
no.
Is there legislation that's being proposed to turn it into that?
So there are thousands of bills that get introduced in every Congress. And so just because something gets introduced, it doesn't mean it's an actual thing that's happening. So there might be something that's been introduced, but because there's so many, like they're not on my radar.
Hmm.
Is anything moving? Has anything moved through the House or the Senate? No. Like
Yeah.
Congress isn't doing anything about it either. It's no.
Huh. That's so wild. I obviously would like to see it. I personally, and we might disagree on this, but I personally like the idea of it. I like the idea of examining where all this money is going, because it just seems like there's just so much egregious waste at a governmental level, with the money that they're just gross mismanagement of funds. And I like the idea of having more like lean startup entrepreneurial type values injected into government resources. But yeah, obviously it's got to be legit and there's got to
Yeah.
be checks and balances within that system as well. Like there should be no single point of authority, when it comes to any of these things, even if you like the guy. You know what I mean? Like I personally am a fan of Elon. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of Elon, but I still don't want to see a single person have ultimate control with no checks or balances or any barrier between them and taking an action. Like it's still a government at the end of the day.
Mhm.
It's still not a business and should be treated differently. But it seems strange that this is in the cultural zeitgeist so heavily without it actually being a recognized authority from the government.
Well, and this is why I don't even trust the idea that this is about waste, fraud, and abuse, which at this point is just a talking point. Because if you really want to know where the waste is, all you have to do is look up inspectors general's report, because it's their job to look at the executive agencies and basically call them out on all of the bad stuff they've done. And over the last 12 years, like when I see a hearing and there's an inspector general that's testifying, it's always on my list. And that's where you hear all of this stuff. So we have, oh my God, thousands of pages that are just low hanging fruit. Like, here you go, look at this. That's not what's happening here. The Trump administration fired 17 inspectors general immediately. And then this is just blanket firings, which is, I mean, the proof is in the fact that they were firing people that they immediately had to hire back because they had critical jobs, so it's they're not being careful. They're not using all the work that we've already paid for to identify the problems in our government. Like if you want to know about waste, contractors for the Pentagon, like half of the money we spend on defense in the United States goes to private contractors, and they have been price gouging us for years. It's all documented, and they're not doing anything about that.
Yeah.
So I can't tell you what the motivations are, but it's not to find the waste that's already been identified and do something about it. That much I know for sure.